SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
Well, you're going to like your money today. All the indexes in the green. The Dow Jones up 330 points. And and the NASDAQ up 483. You know the story. Even the funny money has rebounded a bit. And now, by the way, there are reports indicating that the funny money, as you like to call it, is an indicator of investors' appetite for putting money to work in technology stocks. Considered to be the most volatile. They move a lot one way or another, so therefore they're more risky. Now, you also apt to make a lot more money because of those huge moves. You could certainly invest your money in more stable type industries. You just don't get a lot of movement. Probably safe bets. But I never thought I'd hear that, okay, well, as you see the movement of the price of Bitcoin, thus you may see the movement similarly in the Mag 7 and in the technology industry overall in general. But it's all looking good today, except...
Well, I would imagine that to borrow from Kamala Harris, the Venn diagram of people that have stock options working in Silicon Valley and the people that have large investments in Bitcoin, that Venn diagram overlaps a whole heck of a lot.
I think that's right. I absolutely do think that's right. So it's just another thing the algorithms are starting to look at. I don't know that we know that. But though I'm pleased to see the markets rebounding because we had a brutal period there the last couple of weeks. It did have a decent day Friday. Once again, it's all because of the prospect of reducing interest rates. So we're back to the Fed watching deal again. I will say that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he was on the Sunday news shows yesterday. And, man, he was painting quite the rosy picture for 2026. He said, no recession, take that off the table. And he basically indicated that we're looking for really strong, solid economic growth in 2026. And he thinks Americans are going to be happy, going to be pleased, going to like it. And that should factor into the midterms. Now, this word affordability has crept up as being like maybe the most overused word in politics. But the president using it, of course, is Zoran Mondani, the Democrat socialist mayor of New York City. He's the one that really pronounced it the most and, I guess, emphasized it, gave it attention. Of course, he and the president had quite the ordeal there in the Oval Office last week. Quite the meeting. I was a little shocked. The president said he thinks conservatives are going to be happy with the way this guy runs New York City. I don't know. I mean, here's the deal. They share the common goals of we got to make the place safer, we got to make housing more affordable, we got to make the cost of living overall more affordable. I just don't think they necessarily jive on how to do that. That's where the big question is. 6,600, that's the level of the S&P right now. Some investment analysts are predicting 7,700 by the end of the year next year. That's a lot. That is a lot, which would be fantastic. I think everybody would like to see that happen. That'd be a big deal. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the firebrand conservative congresswoman from the great state of Georgia, says she's out. She ain't going to run again. Well, she's actually leaving before she would even run again, announcing January as the end of her tenure in the United States House. There are a million different theories as to why she is doing this. I did watch her 10-minute video where she made such an announcement, and it was, I know you're shocked at this, me. In that video, I couldn't really tell, other than she just says, well, yeah, I have these bills, and the speaker won't act on them, and I didn't get much out of it other than that. Did you? I mean, I didn't take away and say, oh, that makes sense. That's why she did that.
The only thing that stood out to me was the date of her effective resignation is a couple days after she's vested for her retirement.
I know. And that
but
is...
But in fairness, that's not as big a deal as some are making it out to be online because you're vested by the number of years. So... yeah, it'd be nice to have $8,700 a year from the government.
It's $14,790, by the way, but it still ain't no amount of money. I did the math on it.
Oh well, I did like napkin math in my head, so it's still
it's nothing.
A nice chunk of change to get every year.
Yeah,
it'd be a nice Christmas bonus.
Yeah,
but it's not life changing.
5 years of salary, it's
especially compared to her net worth.
Yeah, which, by the way, I did look that up. And this is what frustrates me about that. So, just so you folks will know, members of Congress are required to file they call it financial disclosure report. In the House, they file it with the clerk of the House of Representatives. And they have to do it annually. And I'm looking at hers right now, and you have to provide assets and, quote, unearned income. That would be passive income from those assets, dividends, interest, for example. And then you also have to disclose, of course, a list of all those assets and their value. And then you've got to also show your earned income. In other words, besides your congressional salary, are you working elsewhere, earning income elsewhere? And then you have to schedule out your liabilities. I mean, it's just a typical personal financial statement, if you will. And then you've also got to show any agreements that you have that's defined by the House as to what agreements you have to disclose. Gifts, travel, payments and reimbursements, payments made to charity in lieu of honoraria. In other words, you get asked to speak by charity, and rather than taking a payment for that, you donate it to the charity. Investment vehicle details such as 401ks and stuff. So I'm looking at hers. This is what frustrates me about it. It's listed as a range. So, for example, the Congressional Federal Credit Union, where she would contribute to this asset, and you earn interest on it, it says the value is between $1 million and $1 and $5 million. That's the problem I have with this. And then 500, she has a DC. She's in the DC3 401k plan, and she's got that invested in a 500 index fund. and it's worth between $1,001 and $15,000. As my dad used to say, I'd like to have everything in between that. And it goes, she's got Fidelity International, Vanguard. These are just typical 401k type investments. As far as individual stocks, she shows in those 401ks Caterpillar, $1 to $1,000, Johnson & Johnson, Nestle's, Schwab custodial money market account, Tesla, etc. But the vast majority of her wealth is in Taylor Commercial. That's her construction company. You've heard her talk about that. Taylor, I assume, is that of her maiden name, right? So that would be her family from, I guess, maybe her father. So I don't know. Well, it shows that is valued between $5 million and $1 and $25 million. So what is it? I don't know. But it's frustrating the way. Well, can we pin that down to be more definitive? We're coming right back. It's Hannah Davis with the Federation for American Immigration Reform at 10:35.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studios. So, just talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. Look, maybe she timed it to get this $14,000 a year. I know there are a lot of people out there that think that members of Congress receive this egregiously lavish pension. It just depends on how you define that, I guess. I don't know, $14,000 a year for 5 years of service, which means you got to run 3 campaigns to get elected to get $14,000. And by the way, you got to be 62. She's 51. So she's 11 years away from getting a dime out of that. So I don't think that's it. I don't know what it is, and we could certainly speculate all day long as to what drove that. And I don't know how believable her story, if you will, is in that 10-minute video that she posted. It's hard to tell, but she's out. And at this point is what it looks like. January 6th, I think, right, is the effective day. 5th or 6th.
Thought it was 5th.
But maybe you're right. But it's right, a couple of days after she fully vests. I guess what I don't understand, couldn't you stay the rest of the year? I mean, if you're just itching to get out so bad, you got elected a year ago for 2 years. Just finish it out. But I guess maybe, Rhino, you don't get as much attention when it happens consistent with the end of your term. Okay, no big deal. You're not running again, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, this was news over the weekend, and we're talking about it on a Monday, whereas if she announced, I'm not running for re-election, that would be about 15 minutes on a random Thursday.
Right.
Not nearly as much attention.
It does make you wonder about that. So, and again, we're guessing. We don't know. Only what she said. Just seems
applying the logic gleaned from years of observation.
Right. That's we've seen enough of it. So, speaking of pensions, I had to get to this. Something we obviously talk about a lot on this program is the public employees retirement system, which, by the way, is more generous than is the federal employees retirement system. The one that Marjorie Taylor Greene and other members of Congress participate in. No, it's nothing new, nothing different. That's been around since the 60s. Actually, before that, the structure of it today has been around for a long time, going back. And there are different levels of it, just like there are in the public employees retirement system. So, we have a special election, several, in the state of Mississippi. The one for District 26, that's a Senate district that was previously held by now Mayor of Jackson, John Horn. That election was held, a couple of weeks ago? Special election. It's nonpartisan. It's a so-called jungle primary type election. All candidates are included on the same ballot. No party affiliation is included on the ballot. 2 candidates advanced to a runoff, which is to be held next Tuesday, December the 2nd. One of those is...
Because used to it would have been tomorrow, right?
I think that's right.
They pushed it back till after Thanksgiving.
I think that's exactly right, because it falls in Thanksgiving week. So it's Lakeisha Mumford and Letitia Johnson that are headed to that runoff election next Tuesday. I received a call from a campaign worker. I live in that district. I received a call from a campaign worker on behalf of Lakeisha Mumford. And it's a live call, by the way. It was not a robocall. And the individual calling, of course, made the typical spiel about the candidate and their qualifications and their plans as a state senator, their priorities. And one of those was protecting state retirement benefits. And, of course, that got my attention. And respectfully, and so, of course, look, this is the right thing to do. The caller, the campaign caller, ends the call, which is what they should do. This is just sales 101, by asking for the order. Can we count on your vote? No problem with that. That's what they should do. And I said, well, at this point, I can't commit. I'm curious to know more specifically what is the candidate's plans to address crime in her district and the public employees retirement system. How do they feel about school choice? Things that we talk about here that are going to be high priorities in the coming session, as we know. How do they feel about the ballot, restoring the ballot measure, right? Certificate of need laws, things that I happen to find as a voter important and high priorities. And I didn't expect, of course, the caller to answer those questions on behalf of the candidate, but they told me that the candidate would call me back and discuss those. And if anybody's out there listening, I'm waiting. I mean, I'm not mad. I hope they do. I'd love to have that discussion with the candidate, because these are things that I feel like whomever wins is going to be faced with voting on. I know if the Speaker of the House achieves his goal, where the priority is to enact, at least in the House, universal school choice, he's making it very clear the Mississippi State Senate is going to have to make a call on that legislation. Now, as we know, in the past, they've sent stuff down there related to school choice, and it gets kiboshed in the committee by Senator Dennis DeBar, who heads the Senate Education Committee. And we know that the lieutenant governor is not a fan, certainly, of universal school choice. So I think it's a valid question to ask of one who, if wins, is going to be seated in the Mississippi State Senate. Where do you stand on these issues? And I find that to be a high priority here in the state of Mississippi. I'd also like to see restoration of the ballot measure process in the state. I'd like to see repeal of the certificate of need laws. I'd like to see that happen in total. maybe we could ease into that, phase into that. Some parts of it were eliminated last year, but it was pretty minor, honestly. So those are some things that I'd like to see addressed. Mobile sports betting is the other one I asked about. Where do we stand on that? You know, it's a controversial matter that, again, passes the House and doesn't get any traction whatsoever out of the committee headed by Senator David Blunt, the gaming committee chairman in the Mississippi State Senate. He has certainly not advanced such legislation, has objections to it. I think there's some other senators who do as well. So I'd like to know. I also did see that the Commissioner of Agriculture and Commerce, Andy Gibson, he's announced his candidacy for governor. He's also said that he would like to see a dedicated stream of income to the public employees retirement system. Dedicated source of income, recurring in nature, that would be used to shore up PERS. The actuaries say you need $200 million a year for 30 years to do so. That's on top of the recent increases in the employer contribution rate. So this is going to be front and center. No doubt about it. And I just would like to see where these potential state senators stand on this matter. Alan in the Delta said, I read this morning Marjorie Taylor Greene and others in Congress got a lot of PPP loans. Amazing if you want to get rich, run for office. Ridiculous. I hear you, Alan, but tens of millions of companies got PPP loans. There's nothing unique about that. The fact that she received one, her company qualified it. If you're mad about that, and I get it, there was a lot of scamming, a lot of abuse. We should be mad at the Congress and the president who put that program together, knowing this amount of money is going to be scammed to hell and back, right? Guess what happened? It's got scammed. They're still chasing down people on that. Forgivable PPP loans. In other words, we drop money out of helicopters to businesses whether they needed it or not. And then what happened a year later? Inflation. Shocking. We're stepping aside for a break. Hannah Davis, policy analyst with the Federation for American Immigration Reform, is up next.
From theCBrook.com. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays, and we are live from the Element Wealth studio. It's Hannah Davis, policy analyst for FAIR. That's the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Hey, Hannah, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so give us the scoop here. There's a lot of talk about the state of immigration in this country. I mean, by all accounts, it certainly looks like that the president has kept his promise of shutting down the border. I talk about that on the program all the time. I remember during the Biden era, seems like every day on the national news channels we would see these images, well, mainly the news channels that were willing to expose what was going on. We would see these images of these caravans, people just flocking from the south, crossing over the border. Now they've been dispersed all over the country, and the president's enforcing the law, and he's ordered ICE and other law enforcement to find people who are in this country illegally and return them. So we're seeing some reports about doing that operation in Mississippi and in Louisiana, and there are all kinds of reports on that. What can you tell us?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, the previous administration allowed for open borders, and the borders are closed, but that doesn't mean that the people who came in under the previous administration have left. And so we've seen an uptick, particularly in major cities. But it's interesting. We're going to be seeing an uptick in sweeps and raids, ICE operations in Louisiana and Mississippi. I know there's one that's supposed to start after the Thanksgiving holiday. I believe they want to start on December 1st. That would be targeting Louisiana as a whole, some portions of Mississippi, and I think specifically really targeting on New Orleans. And, the operation's got a name called Swamp Sweep. Their goal is to round up, arrest, and deport about 5,000 individuals that are here illegally. And operations in Louisiana have been previously very successful, and in Mississippi. Back in August, they rounded up about 80 people. One of them who had illegally entered the nation 17 times. One of them was a drug trafficker. So these are the worst of the worst. And I do know that the Mississippi governor, Reeves, he's on board with it, but there's a lot of representatives that are not. And, they're fueling the fire with divisive language, saying that these ICE raids and sweeps are racially motivated, but they're not. It's just upholding the rule of law. And hopefully New Orleans will cooperate because Louisiana is a anti-sanctuary state. But New Orleans always defies that law. They don't cooperate with federal immigration authorities at all. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
And this deployment into New Orleans and into Mississippi, Louisiana, Mississippi, but kind of a focus on New Orleans because it is thought that there's a concentration of illegals in New Orleans. That's to kick off a week from today, right? December 1st.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. And I think it'll be successful. There was a similar operation in Charlotte called Charlotte's Web, and it was a short, maybe a little bit over a week, and they arrested 250 people. So they keep meeting their goals, and they keep finding individuals who, like I said, have either entered the nation illegally numerous times or have criminal rap sheets days long. Mississippi, where you are, you guys have, according to our estimation, FAIR did back in 2023, you guys have about 35,000 illegal aliens. I imagine it's much higher now.
Yeah.
And that costs your taxpayers almost $200 million a year. And so there's definitely, I think when they say that they're going to round up 5,000 people, I think that's actually a conservative number, but they're going to start with that.
So there are stores and shops and restaurants and merchants that are reporting that they have employees, right, that are laying low, that are concerned about this and not showing up for work and so forth. So are you hearing the same? What do we think about that?
Yeah, I think when ICE notifies the public of a potential operation, that naturally happens. The American economy, the backbone of the hospitality industry is built on illegal alien labor. Unfortunately so. It doesn't benefit our economy and it doesn't benefit the alien. And so, they're going to lay low. But it comes down to employers. They need to stop hiring illegal aliens. They need to pay Americans livable wages. And Americans, for every job an illegal alien has, an American will do. And so hopefully, if they do lay low, they're going to end up apprehended some way, somehow. And an American can take that job eventually.
Yeah, so this is kind of a crazy story. I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, and it concerns Home Depot in California. Have you seen this? Where there are...
I may have.
Okay, protesters protesting ICE, liberal protesters, and they're standing in line at the Home Depot, and they're purchasing a single 17-cent scraper, and then they're returning it. So what they're trying to do is disrupt the business of the Home Depot because it is thought that there are ICE operations occurring in their stores, and Home Depot is complying with the law and allowing that. So these people are trying to disrupt that. I'm looking at a video of it right now. It's a line as far as you can see in the Home Depot of people buying a 17-cent item and then turning it around and returning it and then buying it again to disrupt law enforcement.
Absolutely outrageous. And something has to be done to hold these people accountable. It's obstruction of justice. They're getting in the way of a federal agent's job. When it comes to Home Depot or Lowe's or really any hardware store, there's a lot of day laborers that will loiter and linger in parking lots to see if they can get a job for the day. And a good amount of the time, they're illegal aliens.
Oh.
And so that's why we've seen an uptick in ICE activity sometimes even Border Patrol activity at Home Depots or hardware stores.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but you're probably right. It's probably not so much that they're working at the Home Depot as much as it is, you're right, they're loitering to maybe find construction companies, construction organizations that might be looking for labor, and they make themselves available. And probably the question never gets asked, are you legal or not? And they're just going to pay them cash. You know that happens a lot. Don't ask any questions. Just bring them out to a job site and they do work.
That's exactly right. People are paid under the table. Companies are refusing to use E-Verify to ensure that who they're hiring is actually legally present and has work authorization. And it's a shame. Every state differs on their E-Verify laws and the regulations behind ensuring that these people are working legally. And so you see that. And the construction industry is riddled with illegal aliens that are being paid under the table, pushing Americans to the wayside. And because the employers like it. They get to pay someone under the table. They get to pay them at a lower rate. And then that American man who's sitting there at home who needs a job can't get one because he has to be paid over the table. He has to be taxed. And companies don't want to jump through those hoops. So it's a shame.
Yeah, it sure seems like it. So, Hannah, how do we reverse these tens of millions that flowed in here? This is just causing so many problems in our country. Not just in terms of taking jobs that Americans would hold, but they're entering our schools, enrolling in our schools. Mm-hmm. They're clogging up the emergency rooms in our health care. We could just go down the list, taking housing and so forth. They're minimizing our culture. What do we do with these tens of millions? Or is there really going to be an effort to deport them?
I think so. And you're exactly right. To go back to what you just said, immigration, regardless if it's illegal or legal, affects the society. It affects an economy, sometimes for the better and sometimes not. Illegal aliens, they tend to use emergency rooms instead of having an internist or a primary care physician. And so it creates a backlog. They're in our school systems. Teachers are overwhelmed and already underpaid. And you've got a bad student-to-teacher ratio, and then half the class is learning English as they go. It makes things very difficult. And what we're doing right now, and when I say we're, I mean the current administration, what they're doing right now between the Kristi Noem DHS commercials or the promises that they're keeping true, the self-deportations are at an all-time high.
Yeah.
I think it's about 500,000. No, it's over 1 million. Forced deportations are about
Last I checked, August, I think it was about 500,000, so it's probably up since then.
Okay.
Yes.
But things like that, these operations that we first started talking about when I came on today, Swamp Sweep or the Charlotte's Web, the LA raids, the Chicago raids, the Seattle raids, those send a message that people who are freeloading and who are, making American taxpayers pay for their benefits are no longer welcome here and that they need to leave. And fortunately, this administration, people like to dog this administration and say, oh, how horrible, how racist, this is the immigrants are the backbone of our community. And that may be true that they are to some extent, but they also make it very easy for these people to self-deport. They'll give you a plane ticket. They'll pay for your transportation. They'll give you money to do so. So on the flip side of that coin, they're saying, hey, you can do this the right way. We'll let you come back eventually.
Yeah, and making it clear, if you do this right, then you got a chance to get back in. But if we deport you, you're not coming back.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Hannah, appreciate you joining us, and thanks for the update on everything going on the immigration front. It's a big problem, and hopefully we continue to address it. And I think it's a good idea, these ICE sweeps in Mississippi and Louisiana. Appreciate it, Hannah. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Hannah Davis, Policy Analyst, FAIR. That's the Federation for American Immigration Reform. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Money should never... You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
and whatever comes our way. Yeah, darling, go make it happen. Take the world in a loving place. Fire all of the guns and explode into space.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. So I got to tell you, this video of this line of people in the Home Depot I was just talking about, that is nothing short of shocking. And they got, I can't make it out, on their backs, they're all wearing some sort of sign that's attached to their back that's got the Home Depot logo. And I can't tell what it says on it. But look, I'm looking at it right now. This is a big Home Depot. There are 10 self-checkout stations, right? And there are lines at each one of them. And one of them just held up the little scraper. It's like an ice scraper.
Well, that's the funniest part to me is the Home Depot.
Maybe it's a paint scraper.
They had about 20 ice scrapers in stock. Everybody else in line has putty knives.
That's what it is. That's exactly what I'm looking at right now. It's a standard handheld putty knife. And so they're buying it and then getting in line again to return it.
That would take one phone call from whoever's in charge of that store to corporate going, hey, can we stop doing returns on everything under $1 for 24 hours?
No, all sales final. It's 17 cents, right? So, the first thing that comes to mind, you ain't got nothing else better to do than this. So, by the way, they're all saying that the ice scraper was because it's ice, right? They're trying to call it. Aren't they clever? Aren't they clever? Oh, my gosh. And a couple of the people in line are Home Depot employees as well. This is sick. It totally is. Unbelievable. So, of course, you can conclude nothing more than...
the angry liberals on the text line wonder why I call them worthless.
These are people who, of course, prioritize illegals in this country over an American business that hires Americans that's being harmed, that provides services to Americans, goods and services. That's just how they think. That's how
it's because they're
upside.
stupid enough to think that there is no such thing as illegal immigration.
That is absolutely true.
Because you have to be that stupid to vote Democrat in the year of our Lord 2025.
So I have said before, to your point here recently, about how it appears that some of the woke nonsense, especially the radical gender ideology, has subsided a bit as being a high-profile item. Except, did I see this right? I just caught a little glimpse of it, that Democrats in Congress are talking about legislation that would, at the federal level, mandate that
dudes in dresses
would be able to play in female sports. Did I see that right? I might have to look at that.
It wouldn't surprise me. It's not going anywhere.
No, of course not. Have they not learned on that? And, of course, you saw that...
Democrats learning from their mistakes? No.
You saw that there was a vote to denounce socialism last week, and a large number of Democrats in the House, 90-something in the House, that's not quite half, but still a large number, did not support the legislation, the resolution that would denounce socialism, which means they're fully embracing it. And, of course, they've not tried to shield their feelings there. And to them, that just means more government, more taxes, more control, more insertion into your life. That's what they're talking about. Because, of course, they're smarter than the average person is out there. They know how to run your family, your household affairs, everything from your budget to your health care to schools, and what your house has got to look like, all the above. They're superior. That certainly is what they attempt to project that their intellect is superior to yours. Everything about them is just better than people making their own decisions. Out there in Texas, look who's running for Congress. It's the ShamWow dude. Have you seen this? This is often Vince Shlomi. He was the salesman who we know from hawking the super absorbent towels. Typically, it was 2 a.m. when those ads would run. He's entered the Republican primary for the Texas District number 31. Vince Shlomi, known for selling, pitching, ShamWow, and Slap Chop.
Yeah, he put out a really cringy Ghostbusters cover about a month ago. He did a whole music video, Woke Busters.
That's awesome.
It was cringy.
That would be The Great Journey with Faithfully, one of their all-time, maybe their greatest tune ever. 1983, The Frontiers Tour. News is next, coming right back.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year, oh Lord. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays, and we appreciate you joining us today. Mo says maybe you should have each candidate talking about this special election for Mississippi Senate District 26, previously held by now Mayor of Jackson, former Senator John Horn. And that runoff is set to take place next Tuesday. Lakeisha Mumford and Letitia Johnson. Mo says you should have each candidate on the air and ask those questions of them, where they stand on that. I'm not sure they come on, honestly. And, of course, remember, Mo's, our show is statewide, and so typically we try to stick with races that are more of interest across the state when we bring them on. But I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to host a little debate. We don't have it a week, but we'd certainly suit one up real quick and pose some of those questions at them and get into the weeds, because that's part of the problem, isn't it, Rhino? Is that nobody really ever gets the chance to get into the weeds with them. And even when you try, sometimes when we have candidates in, they just skirt it. They won't really answer the questions succinctly and directly. But, of course, I'm always open for that. And Mo says make the offer on the air, so I'm making it. And rest assured that when you come in our studio, you will be treated with the utmost of respect and courtesy. We just want information. That's all. So, look, I want to stabilize the public employees retirement system as well, but as the saying goes, the devil's in the details. It's an easy statement. That's like saying that I like puppies. Yeah, okay. But again, what is your specific plan? Even a dedicated revenue stream, as some are proposing. Okay, from where? Because that's tax money, no matter how you look at it. Now, some would say, as the House attempted last year, let's just pull it from PERS. From the lottery, and let's fund PERS. The first $80 million, as you know, goes to roads and bridges. Okay, well then that's $80 million roads and bridges don't get. So then to cover that, more taxes. So you're just playing a shell game here. You're not really producing income. You're just recutting the pie, as I like to say. You're not expanding the pie. It's a tough problem, no doubt about it. And Mo says, by the way, the IT crew at the Home Depot can end this quickly. Just shut down the terminals. Yeah, you could do that. But that may cause more problems in Moe's, of course. You got legitimate customers. Now, I don't know how many in that line are legitimate. They're having a hard time making their way through that mass of people that are doing that. And that may have been what they did. Again, this was just a short 2 or 3 minute video, and it did make national news, what's going on out there. Don't give anybody any ideas. Maybe I shouldn't have talked about it because they're nuts out there saying, oh, yeah, we could go do that to interfere and obstruct ICE. And Hannah, that we just had on from FAIR, she's absolutely right. Couldn't that be construed as obstruction? I mean, it's a fine line, again, but I guess.
Not really, I wouldn't say, because if they were trying to conduct an ICE raid at that particular Home Depot and that line of people barricaded the illegals from ICE agents, then yeah, that would be obstruction. But they're just obstructing Home Depot's daily business. They're not really obstructing any justice.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, the protest is designed maybe, I guess, to encourage Home Depot to maybe have a talk with the ICE people. It's to punish
Home Depot for actually obeying the law.
Okay.
And not buying into the BS leftist narrative that there is no illegal person.
Yeah, which is not true. So,
Kumbaya, open borders.
Oh, man, that's so crazy. Well, that's what's going on out there with the Home Depot. Kind of bizarre. The president's approval ratings have slipped. There are concerns about the economy. We got very low consumer sentiment is going on. 45% say they approve of how he is handling the immigration issue. 55% disapprove. I don't know what they disapprove of, honestly. I mean, that just would come down mainly to Democrats and I guess some Republicans that are joining them.
It's the weak-willed people that I talked about before he even got elected when he was proposing mass deportation.
Yeah.
And I told you to steel yourselves against the stupidity coming from the talking heads in mainstream media, where they will find every bleeding heart, blowhard story they can to tug on your heartstrings and try to blow it all out of proportion. That's how you wound up with whatever his name was, the quote-unquote Maryland man that should have never been here, and they all cried about it. We got to go see him in prison, and we got to go have margaritas with him, and all that crap.
That seems to be just the poster child for what's wrong with the whole deal there, in my view. This Maryland
over the
nut,
weekend, there was a guy working in a restaurant that was being detained by ICE, and 2 officers have him one arm and another arm, and the caption was that he has a knife in his hand.
Yeah.
And leftists were looking at one hand that's empty and going, look, he doesn't have a knife in his hand, while ignoring the other hand where he's obviously holding a knife.
I saw that. Oh, my gosh.
So it's kind of pointless to try to argue with these idiotic leftists because they are refusing to acknowledge reality.
That's kind of like the story in the shop at the racetrack with a rope that they maintained was a noose. Remember that? In the circle, the loop itself was about 3 inches or something like that. And what do we find out? It was like the garage door handle.
It was a pull down.
Oh, my gosh. Because that's all they got is stupid crap like that. Nothing of substance. Here's something of substance we got to pay attention to. A big old meat plant, Tyson Foods, to close a major plant that's up in Nebraska. And this plant has 3,200, I was shocked, employees. Lexington, Nebraska, it is going to close in January. What they said was there's just a shortage of supply of cattle. Lowest level in nearly 75 years. We, of course, had Senator Andy Berry, president of the Mississippi Beef Council, on the program last week discussing that. What's going on there? This is going to affect, I would think, the supply of beef and thus the price. So maybe we are headed to $10 a pound hamburger meat, as we shared last week. It was the president of Omaha Steaks, I think, that made that assertion, made that announcement. So Tyson said that it's losing a bunch of money, keeping the plant open, on track to lose $400 million this year, up to $600 million in 2026 fiscal year. Wow. So it's hard to, I guess, conclude that they're engaged in any sort of price fixing and collusion when you're losing that much money. Like I said, you're bad at it if you're trying to fix prices and you're colluding in an effort to generate profit and inflate profits. You're not very good at it when you're losing that kind of money. And that's the officially filed financial statements from their third-party public accounting firm. Not a good deal. It's something that we should pay attention to that might affect the downstream price of beef. It's a big old issue. So there also, by the way, Eric Swalwell. I know Richard Cross covered this on his show Mornings this morning. He looks like he's going to run for governor in the great state of California. Can't that guy just go away? He's just like a despicable human in my view. He also wants, you've probably seen the news, he wants voting by phone. Oh, boy. Now, and he made some reference to, well, we can file our tax returns online and apply for health care online. What the hell does that have to do with voting? That's completely different.
It's because they realize the arguments they've put up for the last couple of generations against voter ID are falling on deaf ears, so they got to find another way to cheat.
Well, in fact, to your point, the president on his Truth Social platform, he is employing Republicans to end the filibuster in order to pass legislation requiring voter ID and ending the practice of widespread mail-out, thus mail-in, followed by mail-in voting. Some states do that. They mail a ballot to everybody in their voter rolls, but they are not going to invest any cycles in cleaning up said voter rolls to make sure that only valid people on the rolls get a ballot. We're coming right back.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Okay, so back with you in the Element Wealth studio in response to this congesting the checkout lines there in the Home Depot. The Home Depot, a spokesperson, issued a response saying that they aren't notified that immigration enforcement activities are going to happen and that they, quote, aren't involved in the operations. Well, okay, but they're obviously also not requesting that they depart the premises, be removed from the premises. And that's probably what's got the liberals all upset. Thus, they are filling up the floor there in the Home Depots, buying this 17-cent scraper, and then getting back in line to return it, obstructing the business is what they're doing. So a friend of mine texted in and said, uh-oh, we just came out of Ace Hardware with a putty knife. Don't call ICE. Unbelievable. That's just how crazy things are. On the C Spire text line, we would hire American workers and pay them a living wage if they would work. You can't get Americans to work when the government pays them to not work. Yeah, I agree. And, of course, we have these work requirements to qualify for these various benefit programs. The problem is they're weak. The work requirements are weak. I maintain they're virtually impossible to determine if someone truly does satisfy the work requirements that Our systems need desperately to be modernized. They lack full integration with external systems. So, for example, one of the big problems, probably the number one, I think it's been reported as the number one misspending item in category in Medicaid is a person being enrolled in multiple states. Now, they don't receive any additional money for that. You don't get money for being enrolled in Medicaid. But here's what happens. You enroll in Medicaid in Mississippi, and they automatically re-enroll you. It's not really the way it's supposed to work. There's a little bit of check-a-box process, but nothing to it. Most people don't even pay attention to it, just work through it. But you go to Alabama and enroll. You qualify, and you're approved, and you're enrolled. But you're still enrolled in Mississippi. Third parties are getting paid. In Mississippi, it's Centene that runs our Medicaid program. They're the managed care organization. That's the technical term for it. MCO. They're getting paid by the state a certain amount of money for every person enrolled, whether they use the health care system or not, and regardless of the verification of their enrollment. And then they're in Alabama. Well, the state of Alabama is also paying whomever the third party is for the same person. And it has been determined, been exposed that in some cases they're enrolled in not just 2 states, but 4 or 5 states. And it's not that they're doing it to enrich themselves because they're just moving about. Many of them are just kind of nomads that move about and find work and go to a job site. That's not unusual, especially in the construction business, and their income qualifies them for Medicaid. So they get enrolled in multiple states. They don't bother to call the prior state, just like we were talking about with voting. They don't call the prior state and say, hey, look, take me off the rolls. And so the states pay for everybody enrolled, whether they're legitimate, whether they're a resident of the state or not. And that's because our systems, our electronic systems, lack full integration. We should have the ability in the state of Mississippi's systems that are used to administer the Medicaid program, we should have the ability upon application for approval as an insured in the Medicaid program, we should have the ability to query some central database that shows everybody enrolled in the Medicaid program. It's about 75 million people in the state of Mississippi, in the country. So the state of Mississippi could determine, wait, you're already enrolled over here in Alabama. Denied. That's the way it ought to work. You want to get enrolled in Mississippi, you live in Mississippi, use Mississippi health care and your Medicaid coverage, you got to go disenroll from Alabama. That's the way it ought to work. We don't have the ability to do that. And that applies to SNAP benefits as well. Those are the 2 big ones. And we end up with people who are enrolled in multiple states. Now, in the case of SNAP, that's a little different. That's nefarious in nature on the part of the enrollee. They are, in fact, trying to get SNAP benefits from multiple states. And then, of course, there's a black market of SNAP benefits, as you know, and lots of corruption downstream in the use of SNAP benefits. But we could address that problem. In fact, it's the only way to address that problem. If you're depending on the it's not my problem people to go through that process, well, it's not even practical. Before I can approve your application here, I've got to make sure you're not enrolled in the other states. We don't have the means to do that. Now, that's because, for the most part, we're using ancient technology. We didn't have this ubiquitous connectivity that would facilitate instant inquiry, as we do today, as part of that. Man, you could cut it off at the pass, Rhino, before you even submit the application to the it's not my problem people. Wait, we just found out here, this instant inquiry, you're enrolled in another state. Sorry, come back when you're disenrolled, and then we'll do it again. We could do that today. But I don't know. If we're relying on people, is my point, to address this problem and solve this problem, it ain't going to happen. And the same is true for ACA subsidies. You get there's people who are on their employer insurance that then turn around and go enroll in the ACA and then they're ghost enrolled. Now, a lot of that is what they're called ghost beneficiaries. That's come to light. A lot of that's because the dang insurance companies, they enroll people who sign up and it's being reported. They don't even know they are. They're enrolled in the zero premium class. So they don't care. They're not having to pay anything for it. And I saw this weekend, like 56% of the people enrolled in the ACA subsidies are in the zero premium class. Well, they don't care. So the insurers just sign them up. Don't even know. You get all these crazy solicitations. You see that. And they click a few times. Next thing you know, you're enrolled. You don't know it. And they file that with the federal government, talking about the insurance company, who sends them a check. That's exactly what's happening today. Two things. You in that zero premium, and all of a sudden somebody sees $20 a month coming out of their checking account or that they get a bill for, they'll stop that crap right away. In the zero premium. Where did that come from? Biden. That's why we went from 12 million enrolled pre the enhanced subsidies, which are the thing that was at the heart of the government shutdown, expiring at the end of the year. We went from 12 to 24 million in 2 years. I believe it's because of this ghost beneficiary. Shame on you, insurance companies. You know you're doing it. And they'll say, oh, well, they clicked here. They said they wanted it. Yeah, but the way you presented it really kind of disguised what the heck was going on there. They ought to be kicked out, in my view. So, in the zero premium strata, in that one, I guarantee you'd see enrollment in the subsidized exchanges drop considerably. And, of course, that is coming to an end. And the Democrats will go crazy over it. And it's because, like I said, these zero premium people, they're going to have to pay $20 a month now. And they'll just cry and gnash teeth and clutch pearls and be protesting for $20 a month for pretty dang good health insurance. That's wrong. That's just wrong. And that got me thinking about that with our texter here that said, yeah, we can't get people to work. And I agree. He says the work, well, I don't know, it could be a she. He says the work requirements are a joke. They have been the same people calling me and my neighbor farmers once a year to meet those requirements, but they won't come to work. Yeah. And it's only 20 hours a week, and you can satisfy it with community service. How in the world do they verify that? No possible way that's accurate. Or you're a student, a caretaker. There's some other requirements as well. Other ways, I should say, that you can satisfy the work requirements. But the work requirements, in my view, should be more strict. 20 hours a week working or community service, I don't think that's good. I think that ends up with a lot of people gaming the system, scamming the system. Coming right back with half an hour of middays. It's Monday. Ricky Matthews, SuperTalk Outdoors at 12:05.
From the Seabrook B, Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back to Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Americans are expected to spend big over the holidays, so that kind of refutes the narrative, does it not, that consumer sentiment's down. Then why they spend all that money? Now, some would say it's just kind of soothe their pain, right? They go out and spend, take on more debt that they can't afford. But the online retailers are actually saying they're bracing for a down year, but because of consumer sentiment data. But a recent poll, like over the weekend, says, yeah, people are expected to spend a lot of money. So that's confusing. That's just more confusion for the market there that they got to process. Man, oh man. But I agree with the texter that the work requirement stipulation is a total joke. That it's pretty easy to satisfy those. And I know there's this theory that, if we just put the work requirement in, folks are coming off the couch so they can get their Medicaid and their SNAP. By the way, we've had work requirements in SNAP forever, since the program was created. What's changed about the SNAP program with respect to the work requirements is that you got to work to age 64. Used to be the cutoff was 54. So for that 10-year, those within that 10-year window of age, they now got to work. They got to satisfy the same work requirements. But because those are defined as work 20 hours a week, 80 hours a month is how it works out, how the law actually states it, or provide some sort of community service or be involved in some sort of training. I just feel like it's pretty easy for somebody to check those boxes and say, look, I'm meeting the work requirements, hand me over my benefits. So not sure what the solution is to that other than to, I've said, use technology, even AI, even some scraping of their digital footprint to determine, does this person legitimately look like they're eligible for these benefits? I mean, how many times have we seen on our text line, Rhino, people say, well, I see people getting out of their new fancy cars with their SNAP cards. Well, I'm not a fan of invading one's privacy, but I also believe, well, if the government's paying for it, I got a little more right to know about your lifestyle. Is that not reasonable? Otherwise, we just keep issuing benefits to people. Nothing, by the way, in any law recently passed changes any of that. I know it's popularly believed, and I've seen at least one of our statewide leaders go out and say, yeah, these work requirements are going into effect in December because of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Not true. We've always had those. They got reformed a little bit, adjusted a little bit in one way, extending the age where one has to work from 54, the top of the scale, to 64. And then if you got children above the age of 14, older than the age of 14 in your household, it used to be 17. If you had anybody in your household whose age was less than 17, you were exempt from the work requirement if you had the income to qualify. That's been lowered to 14. Assumption is you don't have to be in the house to raise a child of those ages, a minor child, right, in those ages. So that makes sense to me. But the work requirement itself has been a stipulation to qualify for SNAP. $42 million in the program, and it's expensive. And so, of course, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, says everybody's going to have to be essentially disenrolled and be required to re-enroll and go through the application and approval process. We do that now every 6 months. I'm not sure that I see what's going on there, other though it may dissuade some people and discourage them from attempting to manipulate the system for personal gain. Just the fact that we're calling attention to it and showing in Washington at the highest levels of government, we know there's a problem. We're watching. I do think that could serve as a deterrent to those. But we need stricter, in my view, penalties and punishment for those who engage in malicious fraud. I mean, they know that they're committing it with intent. We need some stricter penalties for that. I don't know what they are, but they don't seem to be serving as a strong deterrent to the...
Feels like the easiest deterrent would be the loss of benefits.
I agree. At a minimum, right? So
it'd be a tough sell for anything like financial penalty like a fine or incarceration, but I'm fairly certain you could get a majority of the population to agree that if you are stealing money from the taxpayers, you should not be allowed to steal any more.
Yeah, I would agree. For all benefits, right? You're caught defrauding one, you're done for all of them. Agree. And something I've always thought made sense to get people off the government dole and into the workforce, and more importantly, to change the landscape of employers who tend to gravitate towards illegals or even legal immigrants who are willing to work for a whole lot less money, is to end the minimum wage. Because under the table, I'm fairly certain many are working for cash that's less than minimum wage. In minimum wage. That's radical. And I know there's some people out there fainting, probably not too many people on the right, but restore the market to that. We're getting reports, by the way, California has this $30 fast food minimum wage. Fast food restaurants are shutting down, saying they can't stay in business on that basis. Of course not. And they're installing automated systems, robots and so forth to take the place of these jobs. I mean, you're literally accelerating the pace at which that is attained when you're imposing these ridiculous minimum wages. It just doesn't work. So what else we got here on the C Spire text line? Somebody said it may not be your district, talking about having the two Senate District 26 candidates who were headed to a runoff next Tuesday. We were discussing that earlier. That's the Senate district previously held by now Mayor of Jackson, former Senator John Horn. Says, I just said that typically we bring in candidates that are statewide in nature, that touch the entire state, because that would be of interest to the whole state. Or district level. We have 3 districts, as you know, Public Service Commissioner and Transportation Commissioner, 3 districts across the state. And so we'll have them in as well. But this person says on the C Spire text line, it might not be your district, but most people from the north part of the state stay away because of how horrible it's gotten here recently. The whole state should want the best person in, despite if it's in your district or not. I totally agree. Totally agree. So certainly not downplaying that whatsoever. I'm just not sure if the network here would be willing to bring in a couple of candidates that are running for a district, a specific Senate or House district. But who knows? I'm open to it. And I'm extending an invitation, and if management around here signs off on it, good with me. Bring them in. I'm curious to know where they stand on these issues and what their plans are, especially if you're going to make promises, I guess, and include as part of your priorities stabilization of the public employees retirement system with its $26 billion unfunded liability. I'm all ears. What's your plan? Because all we've seen thus far is legislators and even statewide officials say, yeah, we need a dedicated stream of revenue to shore up PERS finances. Yeah, agree. But then remember that that's the taxpayers, the non-PERS taxpayers that are paying for that, as well as PERS taxpayers. I don't mean to leave them out, but there are a whole lot more non-PERS taxpayers. Now, I've made it very clear that I believe the state has an obligation to fulfill its contract with members of PERS so that they are fully paid what was committed to them as part of their pension for working for the state government in the public sector. I absolutely believe that. And so I don't see, other than a little work done with respect to the new Tier 5, that helps a little bit, but it's not a permanent solution. It's not going to resolve the longer-term problem. It does help a little bit. It stops the bleeding more than anything else. And remember also, as part of that Tier 5, I know this is a very high-profile issue as well, that new members of the legislature that enter the legislature after, I think, July 1, 2025, if I'm not mistaken, they no longer participate in the supplemental legislative retirement program. That's in addition to PERS. That goes away with this new Tier 5. So new members of the state Senate and House, or state Senate and House specifically, and the lieutenant governor's part of that as well, they could not enroll. The existing members, they keep their benefits. Coming right back.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, so I misspoke a little bit. Little correction. New members of the legislature that start March 1, 2026. I said this year, the new Tier 5 in the PERS program. New members that come into the legislature after March 1st, 2026 will not participate in the supplemental legislative retirement plan. I'm looking at it right now. March 1, 2026. That's when it becomes effective.
So basically anybody that joins for not this coming session, but the following session.
Yeah, so like for example, the special elections that we're having right now, they would all be eligible.
Correct.
Because they're going into the legislature January, whatever date it is. But, right, March after that. So newly elected members in the upcoming 2027 election cycle, newly elected, would not be eligible. Now, I actually would have liked to see them just shut the whole thing down. I think I've actually proposed that here on the air, that make sure sufficient funding exists to meet benefit obligations of everyone who is retired in receiving supplemental legislative retirement benefits. Got to take care of them for their life. Everybody who's in the plan right now, let's say within a certain number of years from retirement, or is vested, if they're vested, you got to take care of them. Make sure there's enough money in the plan to do that. Everybody else that hasn't vested, give them their money back. You're out. There's a way to do that. There's an actuarial way to do that. You're not talking about a lot of money and a lot of people. There's just not that many people in the legislature relative, say, to the big PERS program itself. But just something. No, Thomas, the state doesn't benefit. I don't know what you're talking about there. I mean, it just passes that money on to the MCOs with respect to Medicaid. So if someone's is enrolled in multiple states, and with respect to SNAP, that goes directly to the SNAP recipient. So the FMAP actually is paid to the MCO, not the state. The state pays a certain amount per head for enrollee, is the way that works. Our state employees I think is what they meant, required to participate in PERS. They are, just like you're required to participate in Social Security and Medicare. You can't opt out of that. You got to pay in. Those are pay-as-you-go programs. They literally rely on the amount actively employed people pay into the system to pay benefits out to those who are enrolled in receiving benefits in the program. Said if so, they made a bad investment. When I made a bad investment, I lost my money. I hear you, but that's just the way it works. And I think it is fair to say that many people choose to work in the public sector because of the Public Employees Retirement System. It's somewhat unique and not often found in the private sector, where you have access to a very generous retirement program like that pays you for life, by the way. That's why their slogan in Public Employees Retirement System Mississippi is benefits for life. That's the nature of the program. Thomas says, right, that benefits the state indirectly. Imagine how many providers are still there because they get fraudulent money from enrollees who aren't eligible, but they don't. That's just it. Unless somebody goes to the doctor and gets treated, they don't get paid anything. The only people getting paid anything are the MCOs that manage the program. The state pays them to manage the program. Then they administer the program and pay benefits on the claims. That's the way that works. So, not sure what he's talking about. That. What is the 13th check for? It's supposed to be for the cost of living adjustment for the cost of living, what's called a COLA, cost of living adjustment. It's just that somebody had the wild idea back in the 90s. I say somebody, you know that, members of our legislature back in the 90s, late 90s, who thought the Internet.com boom was going to be permanent. Hey, we can just create this cost of living adjustment that compounds and is automatic regardless of what the cost of living does. That's what has got the program at a state of insolvency, is that you're increasing, ever-increasing benefits with a cost of living adjustment that's compounded, but there's no additional money coming in to cover that. And when they created that back in the 90s, they didn't create any sort of mechanism to cover for it in the form of more revenue being paid into the program. They expected crazy returns on their investments, crazy as in what you had in that 1995-2000 time period. We haven't returned to quite that level of returns. We're certainly doing better now, but overall the program does pretty well at a 9% average over the last decade. That's kind of in line. When you're managing that kind of money and you're trying to strike a balance between risk and safety in your asset investments, not really a bad deal. So we are out of time here today. It's a Monday, top of the hour. It's noon in Mississippi, and coming up next, it's Ricky Matthews with SuperTalk Outdoors. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.